right, so I am excited to start off our last session on evolution and religion. I know we've been talking about religion here and there throughout this, and so I'm a little nervous actually from all the comments all over the place to kind of try to synthesize some of these ideas. So like they said, I'm at Brigham Young University, and I'm just going to start with my punchlines. I have spent a great deal of time studying the intersection between science and religion, and I have learned three things that I think are really important for evolutionary biologists, teachers, the public to know. So number one, it's not a smarts thing, and we're going to talk about that. Number two, evolution and religion are not mutually exclusive, which I think a lot of people have said, have been really appreciative of what's been said here. And number three, it is possible to teach evolution successfully to religious audiences. Let's not give up on them. Love you, Sean, but we're not going to give up on them. So, don't be discouraged. There we go. I like that. So actually, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on me, just so you know why I'm so passionate about this and why I feel like maybe I'm a good person to talk about this. So that's me. I grew up as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Big fat mouthful. We've yet to figure out how to abbreviate it now that we're not supposed to say Mormon. But it's a Mormon, okay? And I was raised in the church. My mother was a convert to the church in college, so I kind of had less of a traditional upbringing in the church because she was sort of new to it. My dad wasn't new to it, but grew up in the sticks in Canada, and we won't even go there. Anyway, his life was crazy. And I have always been in the church. I went to the church's flagship school, Brigham Young University, for my undergraduate. But during my master's, I started studying developmental biology and molecular evolution, and I've been with evolution ever since. I married my sweetheart, who is also a member of the church. I've raised my 4 boys in the church to be deeply religious. In fact, 2 of them have sacrificed 2 years of their lives to serve others for a mission for our church. One's currently, haven't seen him in 18 months. He's in Arizona. But I'm also very scientific. I am all on board with evolution, human evolution. I teach it in its entirety at BYU. I'm all about climate change, vaccines, you name it, right? I'm very scientific, and I've dedicated my life to helping people overcome this conflict because I care deeply about it and I don't want to leave them behind. But it hasn't been easy. I do consider myself an in-group, and I put that in quotes, with the religious community, but I have to say, CJCLDS, we're a weird in-group, I'm not going to lie. This is the latest research from the Pew Research Center. We're the only religion that loves everybody but is hated by all. So, yeah. But within my particular in-group, I do feel like I'm an in-group. I play the organ for the congregation. I'm up there busting it out. I teach gospel doctrine. I know the scriptures, like I feel like I should be an in-group, and yet, in my in-group, they're not a fan sometimes. And not all of them, I should say. Most of them are a fan. I've got 3 of my students here that are a fan. But I wrote a book with one of my colleagues, Reconciling Science and Religion, and there it is on Amazon. You can see this nice picture of a wolf in sheep's clothing. I had the opportunity to attend a conference that was put on, and actually I went because the intelligent design people were there, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about what some of my students are getting, and so I decided to go to this conference. 400 or 500 people there, and I thought, I'm just going to fly under the radar, and I'm like you were saying, who was saying about the Creation Museum, I thought I'd just fly under the radar. I walked in, and I was like enemy number 1, and I went to an hour-long presentation that turned out to be entirely about me and why I was going to hell for teaching evolution. Just complete with jeers and booing and cheering at all the right moments. It was quite the experience. And so that's my question, right? I've experienced this kind of contention, and I want to know why. Why is it that even within my own in-group am I receiving such hatred for talking about something that seems so easy to understand from a scientific perspective? And so I've studied this deeply, and again, I'm going to go back to what I know. And I'm actually going to start with my favorite part, number 3. It is possible to have success. And I'm going to run through a whole bunch of studies really fast. If you want to read them, you can look at the slides and read them. But I do want to emphasize that we can get incredible gains. In fact, incredible gains compared to what we see in other studies. So we'll talk about that. For instance, we did a study just in a single classroom at BYU, and we can get a 13.4% gain in acceptance across that class. We actually looked at my classes specifically, and on average, I'm getting about a 23.5% gain in evolution acceptance over the semester, which is quite large. We did this at 4 religious institutions, so not just amongst my congregations, but other congregations. We're getting anywhere from 18 to 32% changes in acceptance. I've done it with 8 religious institutions and non-religious institutions where we run a little module in the classroom to help them overcome barriers. And 4 of the 8 got significant gains even in human evolution. We've done it in an online module, and we can get 11% gains in human evolution acceptance. We've done it in a theology class where they don't even talk about evolution, and we can even get gains in our theology class on accepting evolution. We've done it outside the classroom at public places like an aquarium. We spent 15 minutes with these people, and 40% of them changed their minds about evolution by just explaining what it means and why it does not conflict with religion. We've done it with religious youth leaders, so seminary and institute teachers, and we can get gains in those. We actually had religion professors and religious educators, youth religious educators. We changed 25% of their minds about evolution with just spending an hour with them. And we've done that in an online format with lots of religious teachers, and 42% of them had an increase in their confidence to teach evolution as a religion instructor. So it can be done. All right, and so here's a typical classroom that you might see. I collect data from my classes all the time, and so you can see where our students at Brigham Young University tend to fall. So we're fairly low. The pre is the lighter bars, and the post is the darker bars. Microevolution, our students generally don't tend to have a problem with microevolution. It's the common ancestry and the human evolution that they have trouble with, but we get these really big gains during the semester. I'm going to come back to this other data in a little bit, but importantly, we're not messing with their religiosity. We try really hard not to. Right? And I think that does help. So let's actually talk about number 1. Is it a smarts thing? Well, it depends on what you mean, right? What do we mean by a smarts thing? So we actually set out to test a hypothesis that my major advisor for my PhD had published a paper saying people who don't accept evolution are inherently dumb. And I thought, I wonder if that's actually true, because I feel like I'm a smart person, and I didn't reject evolution. I never actually had that moment in my life. My parents were pretty pro-science all along. But lots of people that I know reject evolution. So we actually sent out a nationwide survey across the country, all different denominations, and we gave them a set of evolution acceptance statements, a set of creationist statements, which are basically the opposite, and then measured their religiosity, and importantly, we measured their scientific reasoning ability. It's kind of like a science IQ. And so I want you to actually get your arms up and let's see, is there a relationship? This is a structural equation model. If you haven't seen this, that little number is like a correlation coefficient. It's more like a beta weight if you know regression, but kind of like a correlation coefficient. And so you can see creationist views are negatively correlated with evolution acceptance, not surprising, and that religion is positively correlated with creationist views. We see that in the literature. The question is scientific reasoning ability correlated? Okay, so you can get your thumbs up. Positive correlation would mean as scientific reasoning goes up, so does evolution acceptance. Negative correlation would say as scientific reasoning goes up, evolution acceptance goes down. And this would be there's no relationship at all. Okay, so I want to see some voting. Come on, be brave. I'm not judging you. Okay, see a lot of thumbs up, a lot of thumbs sideways. Yeah, it turns out there's no relationship. No relationship between your scientific reasoning ability and your religiosity. No relationship between that and your creationist or evolutionist beliefs. Right? So it's not a smarts thing. There's a lot of other things going on, and I think we've hinted at those kind of throughout this symposium. So maybe it is that we need to lower conflict, increase confidence in using science to answer questions. And I know Liz Barnes is probably going to give us some data maybe on reducing conflict, and we know that that does work. We actually ran a study. This is another really complicated structural equation model, so I'm going to give it to you in pieces because it's a ridiculous figure. I don't even know why we made it, but it does illustrate a point. We asked people, this is, again, a nationwide survey. We asked people about their religious and scientific conflict. Like, can you be religious and still be scientific, or vice versa? We asked them about how often they go to religious sources when trying to make decisions about controversial things. We asked them how often they go to religious sources when making decisions about evolution specifically. We asked them how often they go to science when they're talking about evolution, and how often they rely on science when they're making decisions generally about controversial topics. And then we threw in there their high school coverage of evolution and their affiliated religion's acceptance of evolution as covariates, and we measured their acceptance. Human evolution, macroevolution, microevolution. All right, here we go. So we first looked at our covariates, and it turns out that, yeah, high school coverage and their religion's affiliation does matter. High school coverage matters mostly for microevolution, because I think that's what we cover really well in high school, and so that mattered. These black bars would indicate a positive and significant relationship, all right? So as you rely more on scientific influences, you're more likely to accept. And that makes sense. If it's a dash bar, it just didn't reach significance, right? And if you rely on religious influences, you're less likely to accept evolution. And I want you to think for a minute, what's the relationship of feeling conflict and acceptance? Positive, negative, what do you think? Right? So if you see more conflict, you're more likely to accept evolution. You see less conflicts, you're more likely to accept evolution. Okay? This is what we saw. More conflict, you're more likely to accept evolution. And we thought, what? Because that's not what the data is saying. We went back and looked at our population, and really the only people that were endorsing the conflict were not religious. And we're seeing this in other populations as well. I've seen these data pop up in several different data sets, especially in Liz Barnes' lab and other labs that are doing this, that we're seeing that this narrative of conflict is often being driven by non-religious people. Right? It's just a misconception that we need to just abandon. Okay? So that was interesting. And we have an instrument out. We actually named it the FEAR with a silent P because we love acronyms anyway. Really dumb. Okay, so do we need to teach them the facts? Is knowledge related? Maybe. There's a lot of research on this. Some studies show a positive relationship. Other studies show no relationship. We decided to run a study too, because why not? We can. And so we did a nationwide survey. Half of our respondents identified as agnostic or atheist. Half of them responded to being affiliated with some Judeo-Christian religion. We gave them a measurement. The IC is a measurement of evolution acceptance. We gave them a measurement of religiosity. And then we gave them this EELS measurement, which I'm going to call perceptions of knowledge, because it's not like a multiple choice, get it right or wrong. It's a Likert scale. I agree or disagree with the scientific. This is how science works. So it's meant to be a science knowledge scale, but it's a little bit funky. So science perception. So here's our two populations, non-religious, religious. Does knowledge, their knowledge level, predict their acceptance? Now you get two hands. One for this side, one for this side. So think for just a second. Where do you think it is? Just a second to think, and then put your hands up when you've got it. And again, positive would be the more knowledge, the more they accept. Negative would be the more knowledge, the less they accept. This would be there's no relationship. Okay? All right? I'm seeing some guesses. It was a positive predictor in both of our models. Okay? And you can see it's a little bit less of a predictor here, although I hesitate saying that because our measurement of invariance was significant, so that it's not quite measuring the same thing between populations, so you can't really compare those correlation coefficients, or the beta weights. But yeah, it was a positive predictor, and this got me thinking, so knowledge maybe does matter, but at BYU, it doesn't seem to matter. So our students are scoring in the 96th percentile of all universities that take the biology major fields exam on the evolution part, and the 99th percentile on population genetics and evolution. They're just rocking it. But if you look at our students' acceptance, they're not terrible. We're doing pretty good, but we're not great. We're not great. And so we're really low in acceptance, but really high in knowledge, really high in knowledge. And that got me thinking, I wonder if this knowledge instrument, first of all, is not great, which we know a lot of times the instruments don't measure exactly what we think they do. And I wondered if they were conflating their identity and their acceptance with what they're saying that science says. And so I ran this really quick and easy study. I have like oodles of non-majors biology students every semester. And so I just split them up into two groups. I had 384 here, 385 here. I gave them both the EELS questions, and this is what they look like. Right? In most populations, more offspring are born than can survive. So just scientific statements. And in one class, all I did was append to the front, according to science, blah, 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 right? Trying to see if I could disassociate. I don't care what you believe. I just want to know, do you know what the science says? So the question is, can that actually make a difference? Yes? No? Just by putting a few words on the front of this statement. Yeah, I probably gave the punchline away. Yes, it does. All of a sudden, they're smarter, right? So they actually do know. And interestingly, when you look at case studies, so I pulled somebody out of the control group, and what you see is often their acceptance and their knowledge are almost perfectly mirrored, right? And in the other group, you have people who were 26% accepting, 83% they know the stuff. They're not dumb. It's not a smart thing. Okay, and I appreciated Wesley's clip where he says, that senator was saying, I feel like you're telling me I'm stupid. Well, it's because we have, as scientists, lots of times. And they kind of don't like that. Turns out if you want someone to listen to you, you can't tell them they're stupid starting off. Doesn't work, right? So let's go back to this one for a minute, because the other thing we measured was biblical literalism. So the EELS also has some instruments on there that ask about like Noah's flood and the age of the earth and Adam and Eve. And we measured this pre and post, and we did get a decrease, and it turns out that decrease is a significant predictor of the increase in evolution acceptance. But the decrease is like itty-bitty. And we still have students walking out at the end of the semester, 57.8% biblical literalists. And yet they're like, yeah, cool, humans evolved, yeah, totally fine. Right? And we thought, oh, that's kind of funky. And so we went and looked at students like this guy that says, present animal diversity can be explained by the Great Flood. Yep. I think all complex organisms evolved from single-celled organisms. Yep. And I think, wait, have you thought about these statements? And so we grabbed them, 47 of them, and we conducted semi-structured interviews with deductive and inductive coding looking for these themes. And we used cultural border crossing as our thematic grounding for this and collateral learning to look at what they're actually doing in their minds when they're saying they accept evolution. And one thing we noticed right off the bat is that our students seem to be epistemologically secured. So let's go through that for a second. From an epistemological standpoint, they are okay, or at least they want to be okay, with science and religion going hand in hand. They really want to. So Thomas says, I use the Bible to understand the origin of humanity while I rely on science to understand things like biodiversity, adaptations. If there seems to be a conflict, it just means we don't have all the answers yet. Or Maya, who says, it doesn't really feel important to me to figure out how evolution and my religious beliefs fit together. I just know that they fit together. In whichever way it may be, I just know that they do. Or Claire that says, I figure all truth is godly, whether it's scientific or religious, they can be together. So I was like, I guess it could be evolution, why not? Right? They really want a bridge. They really want these things to fit together in their minds. And so that's one thing I want to emphasize is that evolution and religion are not mutually exclusive, and they need to hear this. They want to hear this. This is helpful for them, right? And it's also helpful for us to be more culturally aware, right? Do we look like our audience? And it turns out for a lot of the time, no, we don't. Right? 89% of the US population believes in God, 33% of scientists, 27% of biologists, and 12% of evolutionary biologists. We don't look like our audience, but we can't just pretend our audience looks like us. They don't necessarily look like us. And we need to be a little more sensitive to these epistemological boundaries. And when I mean epistemological boundaries, we spend a ton of time on this in our class, talking about the epistemological boundaries. And this seems to open the door for them to start building a bridge. So what do I mean by that? Well, I give them something like this, right? Where I say, hey, a special explanation of evolution would say it was this special creation point, young Earth, right? As opposed to totally opposite, an atheistic explanation, that evolution occurred and therefore God does not exist. And then I put two in between. Theistic evolution would say that evolution happens just the way science says, but God's somehow involved, right? And then agnostic. Evolution happened the exact way we think it did, and we have no idea whether God was involved or not. And I ask them to do this. Which of these are compatible with the scientific evidence, and which of the scientifically compatible ones goes a step further to claim something for which we have no scientific evidence? So I actually want you to think about this for a second. You probably know the answer. Judging from my group, I would say you know the answer, but let me give you a second to just think. Or less. I'd have you talk to your neighbor, but I don't want to lose control of the room so I can finish. So just think you can whisper to your neighbor. Okay, maybe I'll ask us, we'll do it together as a group. Are there any up there that are not scientifically compatible? Yeah, I think that's easy, right? How about goes a step beyond? We'd agree here, right? We're saying something for which we have no scientific evidence. And I'm hearing this one too, and I'm glad to hear that one. Because it turns out that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. That's not how science works, right? And students love this. They say, oh, wait, so you're not trying to destroy my belief by teaching me this? No, I'm not. That's not even in the realm of science, right? It's an entirely different epistemology. Science is agnostic. And I do a lot of this work with other professors, too, to help them teach it this way, because I think it's really important. Okay, so interestingly, though, are they really secure? They are epistemologically secured, or so it seems. But going back to Claire, who said, yeah, evolution, why not? When you drill down on the facts, they say all kinds of funky things. So she says, I would have imagined that all the land vertebrates that existed before the ark would have died in the flood. So the only ones that would survive would have been on the ark. But then there's also the other part where maybe we've had some that have since come out of the water and evolved to modern-day diversity from the water less than 6,000 years ago. Right? Like, I don't know what's going on there. Right? So we saw things, and we called it mental gymnastics. It did not fit into our frame that we were using. We have Maya, who was like, yeah, I know they fit together. I know they fit together. And then we ask, and well, it's like a lot of first starts off with the creation of all the species that were made. And then when the species start evolving and adapting to environments, that's when more diversity happens. So we actually have creation of kinds, and then they evolve to diversity, right? Which isn't quite right? And Thomas, who says, yeah, no, it's totally cool, but then when you ask him about humans, he says, oh, yeah, it makes sense for other animals, but I'm not sure on humans. Works for everyone else, but not for us. And so I don't think that they're entirely secured, but they want to be. They want to be, and it turns out knowledge maybe does matter. They need to know, like, how long does it take for modern-day diversity to evolve from single-celled organism? It takes a little longer. And I even had one, I loved it. I didn't put it in here because it was long, but they were like, well, it's been like 1,000 years, right? I mean, that's a really long time. And I thought, not really. Yeah, so they are trying. And interestingly, I'll just share this really fast. We did a faculty development conference, and we saw the same thing. We do these conferences. We bring in biologists, theologians, and local pastors as teams. And what we found is that here's their pre-evolution acceptance. They're self-selecting to come to our conference, right? So these local pastors, theologians, they're like, yeah, evolution's pretty cool. I'm okay with it. But at the end of our conference, our local pastors went backwards. And we thought, oh, that was weird. And as we probed into it, it was epistemologically, yeah, it's totally fine. And then all of us evolutionary biologists started sitting around talking about what it actually meant, and they went, ooh, I'm not sure that's fine. And what we see is a lot of dependent and parallel collateral learning, where they didn't know how to put it together. They want to, they don't know how. All right, so key takeaways for communication. Let's assume competence rather than a deficit. It's not helpful if they're telling you you're dumb before they're trying to communicate with you, right? And oftentimes they're not. They're not. Careful or care-filled communication can help religious audiences overcome barriers to accepting evolution. So we need to be careful with our words. The way that we say it, I think, I mean, and you saw it in that senator on the film who took offense. And it wasn't that Wesley, you'd said it, where are you? You'd said anything wrong. It's just the way it came out, right? So we have to be very careful with the way that we say things. And then teaching and respecting epistemological boundaries can be really helpful because they do want a bridge. Oh, weird, that is the same one. My last slide did not come through. Oh, there we go. I don't know, there was two of those. Okay, so many students who seem epistemologically secure are only sure till confronted with facts, which means they're lacking key factual information, which is, good news. We always need to do a little better, and it's my little challenge. I can do better in teaching evolution, and we do need to. They need to know how long things take. They need to know what common ancestry means. I had one that said, yes, we share a common ancestor, but we did not descend from them. And I thought, oh. Trying to think how that, okay. Anyway, so I'm doing a poor job maybe on some of the things we're talking about. They need to know what can be mentally gymnasticized, that's my new word, or not mentally gymnasticized. I've heard other variations which are even worse. Okay, and if we don't provide the knowledge to build a sound bridge, they may build a rickety one. that is likely to fail if they learn more science. Oh, there's my own timer. And we don't want that. And lastly, our evolution acceptance instruments might not be measuring quite what we think they are. So we do have work to do. I will leave it with my 3 findings. And if you want resources for religious audiences, we have a ton that we've built for lots of religious audiences, not just Latter-day Saints. So if you're interested in that, you can find it at my website. Thank you to my funders and my research team. And that's it.